Wow, thank you so much. I paid Don Demansky, by the way.
Delivered.
Is this close enough? Can you hear? Okay. Gwendolyn McEwen, the Toronto poet, now deceased, once had a very friendly argument with a male painter friend about what the fastest color was. He thought it was red. She thought it was blue. This is Out of the Blue for Gwendolyn McEwen. Just have to get some water first. It's the fastest color, driven out of nowhere, no body of its own to rein it in. It's large and ancient, the color both touched and sound, overflowing everything into which it just can't fit. It's a gush, rushing from the root of thing to thing. It's not the color of coming or going. These are plain and slow as yellow. It's the clonic color of the whelm, bearing more dimension than air. Its hair is static, a shocking blur. It's the highest temperature, reached in a blink, exhausting the tinted atmosphere. It transfixes with its cobalt stare, slapping into you again and again, an ocean to a stone, a currency submerged. It's the bully sharpening itself, a bolt of metal reaming its tinny charge, its molten mutiny cooling into a stick, still lit with the scent of fear. It's the color that can't find its way home, the lost one, its way forgotten. It's a streak, the color with no clothes, a failed invisibility collapsing into being, a bruised prostration, a simple vigilance. I want to take it in my lap, stroke the static from its hair, and ground it in a body of croons. I want to pat its fiery hands down and bandage up its burnt feet and tell it, no matter what, no matter when, my door is always open. Gotta do something here. There. What we reach for. It's the way it laps against my house, spilling through cracks and seeping under doors. I reach for the poem always, a vessel to float and bob across the river, no matter what the weather. It's both vessel and river, and the way they travel together, where the line of one curves into the other. The watermarks on my skin don't alarm me. Each time I drift a little further, soon my eyes will be wavy as hair, my words submerged in the element they trace, a mere signature. I'll read by the light of a fin and reach into the silence, which is smoke drifting in light. I can't see it, but know it's there, the faint scent of something burning in the bright air, a whisper, like the slow leak of a world where everything is brilliant and pained. It moves through me like water, and the color of my life is changed. Return from Erebus. The field is a quiver of arrows, armies of grass, swords waving, sheathed in the green of unknown blood. I'm sitting, trying to read, but there's violence in the air, a revolution turning before me, dividing the worlds. A reconnaissance of crows crosses over. They land in the trees like stabs amidst the churn and swirl of something older than distinctions that divide our breath. Presence, more ancient than birth or death. It hurls itself along, an ablation of one world by another stalking form, like one divided by zero. It equals the place where all that's parallel finally meets. These pines, black with crows, polishing the armor of their eyes. This field bright with weaponry. The buzz and whine of flies, sawing the book from my hands, words from my mind. Words like weights, like coins placed over the eyelids of the dead, so they won't fly open as crows returned from Erebus, so they won't go blind as poplar leaves in sun, the shiver of their surrender in the air. This is another one of the color poems, of which there are 4 in the book. And I'm going to read, I think it's 3 of them tonight, but this is the second one, which is Poem in Black. It's the flag of arrogance flown at half-mast. It's the Cartesian color whose first word is I, the Newtonian despair of cog and wheel, an existential creed. It's self-centered and worships absolutes, pure definitions. It's so young it doesn't remember how to surrender and sings, "This is the fire from which I came," its heart made of kindling, its wings brittle, burnt, disintegrating. It's the color of the lie, not white, which is the lie of the lie, the charred smile as it's told. It's the color of contempt for all things outside its sphere of influence. It's the color that wouldn't, the fallen one, always charismatic. It persuades all the other colors to come home, that it can't live without them. It's the scent of tricksters and priests, self-proclaimed intermediaries, marking the God tree. It's fast as the dart of the serpent's tongue, hitting 2 marks at once. It's the size of the drawer you store the horror in, the shape of the key locked within, the sound of the tumblers like coffin lids closing, tired can't-I of eyes that have seen too much. It's the shape of one person having to bend into the longest night. It's the shadow white casts, the shade of Yin's past, muscling into the moment, like a wave rising and falling, rattling shells and stones so it can know itself. It's the shape of a claw drawing blood, a small feast, the clatter of bones like cutlery. It's the bruise's memory, turning out the light. It's the idea of the cave, the sound of that rending, an echo, the sex of 2 sticks, primitive, those first sparks, the knuckles of death's clenched hands. When I was working on this manuscript, which took about 8 years, I would say, with the exception of 2 people, just about everyone I truly cared about died. And this poem is for one of them. It begins with a quote by a European biologist, philosopher, and poet, Emile Cioran, who said, "What would be left of our tragedies if an insect were to present us his?" Taking leave. The day you died, Mother, I was at the window watching a hawk and crow lock beaks in a death spiral, driving down like a drill through the air and flying apart into pieces, like halves of a single life taking their leave of this earth. My wings felt heavy as paper. No longer could they occupy the air. So the trees and earth levitated as I fell like a pebble. My antennae went blind, useless as worms on my head, all haptic knowledge lost, dissolved, like names I never knew existed. The day you died, Mother, I was learning to read, again a poem of death, moving through its white rags and black teeth, its salmon-scented breath. There are too many deaths, too many lives, Mother. Let this be your last. Sound became predatorial. All my legs collapsed, making a pyre beneath me. Iridescence separated until only a black streamer spiraled through my mind as my body split like a brown suitcase full of invisible clothes. Oh, terrible and final molt. And I felt a shadow coalesce like a great shell, like the body of my mother, darkening the sky I could no longer see from my deathbed here beneath this leaf. Throughout the book, there are short little poems, meditations on ephemera, and I'm going to read just one of those. Meditations on ephemera, metaphor. Wolf in the palace of grass, priest without religion, ruler of kingdoms not yet invented. You're the gorilla in the hills, resisting. You splatter the trees with dusk, their outlines fading like old kings. I pray the wolf my soul to keep. The grass retracts its green claws. Kundalini rising. I remember my bodies the way this desk remembers the oaken log and tree, the sibling forest from which it came. I remember the basements in which I've dwelled, molishly nudging the shadows through tunnels, lumbering from den to den, a worker ant with the weight of a crumb like a house balanced on my back. I have lived above, becoming 100 eyes of a glass house. Nothing escaped my notice. The sun opened and closed, its third eye on the world. The cabochon moon set its amber until my insect self became transfixed and lapidescent, encased in its protective glow. I've lived without windows in a house black as onyx, becoming all ears for tarantula sounds, sprouting antennae to feel my way around, and marveled at how muted and soft the world becomes when the body is robbed of glass. Now the house I inhabit has many levels. From the upper rooms, the moon is 1,000 suns, and I live vertically for the first time. Uncoiling, I ascend from den to attic nest, Kundalini rising. Meeting all my former selves, I slide past branches on the tree, giving roost to the delicate birds of memory, my tongue putting out the fire in my mouth. I ascend my former bodies, pale as skins along the bone stairs, and brush the sand and flies, the birds and flying ants from my mind with a hand finally free to shade my eyes. Some years ago, one winter night, there was a knock at my door quite late, and I live in the middle of nowhere. So I answered the door, and there was the RCMP asking me if I had seen anything out of the ordinary. Poor buggers didn't know they were talking to a poet. Out of the ordinary. Every day I pray for boredom, for nothing to happen. I want a dull life, as though underwater, but even there things are sharper and the greenery sublime. Once when swimming I cut myself, my blood coiled like smoke, becoming a blurry incense for something less gentle than me. I pray for boredom because that blur I sometimes see out of the corner of my eye, I know is something swimming into my life, something trailing the shadowy ribbon of itself, but what it is, I can't say. Because I know it's lost or bored, and it finds and amuses itself with people like me. Because just yesterday, the police came to my door asking if I'd seen anything out of the ordinary, and I didn't know where to begin, so informed them that the moon, smudged as a thumbprint, never rises in the same place more than a few nights in a row. How sometimes it's so full of itself, it interrogates the fields and woods, cribbing light. I identified joy's noesis, wavicles fanning out like hair underwater, chatoyant and scanning the surface of things, a kind of molecular showdown. And I told them how you can cut yourself on water, of the thin shadow sharpening itself there, circling, and it is only a matter of time, so I was glad they came. This, of course, got rid of them and gave me the sense that some things are never to be, as I watched the oily incense of their exhaust, a smoky ribbon trailing my faithless prayer. And the last poem I'm going to read is one of the color poems. Poem in White. Half-bred from absence, fathered by silence. It's the color of paradox. It rejects the weight of the world, the burden of matter. It's the omission of substance. It is and isn't at exactly the same moment. It bears its loss well, having never known anything else. White is the color of laughter held back, of desire waiting, the cup's regret when drained. It's the first color, the primary wound, blindfolded. It's the bowl of ashes you pray over. It flies into fury, oblivious. Its heat is absolute. Its memory is porcelain. It dreams albino. It's the color of a promise before it's broken, the size and shape of a child's coffin, a child who never existed, a funeral never performed. White is formless and void, fragile, without edges, persistent as chaos and full of light. If you touch it, you'll know absence so profound, you won't feel a thing. White turns its blind eye to the leaves, eloping with grass for winter. It's deaf to the canticle of crows flying over, and utterly mute to the autism of the stone, mistaking snow for its own infinite mind. Thank you.